so he's not coming this evening. I sent all our apologies to him. Yes. Ready? Okay. On. Yeah. In accordance with the openness of Local Body Regulations 2014, this meeting is being live streamed and may otherwise be recorded, filmed or communicated on other media platforms. The recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. Both councillors and officers in attendance are reminded to make full use of and to speak clearly into the microphones at all times. A reminder that mobile phones should be turned off or put on silent mode. Those present at the meeting should refrain from taking telephone calls. Item 1. 2. Apologies for absence.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Frank Broadley, Councillor Linda Broadley, Councillor Darwin, Councillor Richard Morris and Councillor Sharon Morris.
Any more? Any declarations of interest? No? Minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Lloydell.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. With your permission, Your Worship, I would like to turn to page 7, item 63, the draft revenue budget. And if, Your Worship, I would like to say a big thank you to the officers and to the chair of PFD for actually putting an additional piece of information on this item. Because a few weeks ago, in the local paper, they actually set out the council tax for all the districts across Leicestershire. And in that item, Oadby Borough Council was seen to be the highest council tax of all districts. Now, although that information at that time was factually correct, what the article failed to inform the public who were reading the article that all the other districts had not had their parish sums added to their amounts. Now, I understand, and I think I will be corrected if I am wrong, that you cannot opt out of paying your parish council tax. It's part of the council, it's added on, and you can't opt out of it. Oadby and Wigston do not have a parish. Therefore, the council tax as we see it here is the correct one as going to print, and all the other districts in Leicestershire will have to add in their parish councils, and therefore they will be paying more. So it really gave, although correct at the time of print, it gave the wrong impression that Oadby and Wigston were the highest council tax in Leicestershire, and they are in fact, as this points out, the lowest. And I would like that information to go on record. Oadby and Wigston have good value for money for their council tax. They are the lowest in Leicestershire. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to the officers.
Okay. Got anything else on agenda 4 to the previous meeting? No? Got any action lists arising?
Get them to move so you can sign.
Okay, is everybody happy that I've signed the minutes? Both lots?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any action arising from the minutes? Oh. Any motions on notice?
None of received, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any petitions, deputations and questions?
None of received, Your Worship.
Okay, I've got nothing to say. Only thank you for those that came to my civic service. It was very much appreciated. Thank you. There's nothing else there. If there any members got any comments to make on the mayor's or deputy's engagements? No? Okay. Right, leader's statement will be at the end. Okay, so we come now to agenda 10. which is the establishment of a capital projects subcommittee.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report requests that Council approve the creation of a capital project subcommittee that builds on the success of the OP Pool and Roxhill subcommittees, which is intended to supervise any major capital project that is delegated to it by the Council. The report includes terms of reference for the committee, and members are asked to approve it. Happy to take any questions should any arise.
Okay,
Councillor Boyce.
okay, Councillor Boyce?
Thank you, Your Worship. Somewhere in the report it actually indicates that I suggested it. It seems reasonable. I should therefore move it. I think the two 5-member panels on Roxhill and on Pool have proven that early and continuous engagement of members in capital programmes of this nature make an awful lot of sense. They make it much smoother and much easier for decisions to be made, and therefore the setting up a standing committee on capital programmes, in my view, makes perfect sense. So I move.
Okay, Councillor Charlesworth?
Yeah, happy to second, Chair. I know there was a little concern about C, recommendation C, but really that's just telling the monitoring officer to do what we're asking. It's a pretty matter-of-fact item, so I don't have any concerns. If we did have any concerns over the Constitution, we can always bring it back later and have another look at it, but I think we're just telling an officer what to do here, and there's no problem with that.
Okay. It's been moved by Councillor Boyce and seconded by Councillor Charlesworth that the recommendings be approved. All those in favour? Any objections? No. Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Okay. Now, agenda item 11. I believe Councillor Charles would like to start this, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Agenda item 11 is the council tax setting 23-24. As Policy, Finance and Development Committee Chair, I move the recommendations on page 20 to 22 of the report. Under the Local Government Finance Act, councils must set council tax by the 11th of March, and the report asks members to do so. It is important to mention that the recommendations as set out include the prescriptive wording necessary to do this. It is proposed that the Band D level of council tax is increased by the maximum amount under the referendum limit, which is 2.99% or £7.16 in money terms, taking the charge from £239.50 to £246.66. This preset raise covers all expenditure for which we are responsible, and unlike most other districts and boroughs, this includes all expenditure for our area as we are unparished. Overall, the impact to our residents of our precept increase, along with those of our precepting partners, the County Council, the Police and the Fire and Rescue Service, is at 4.92% increase overall. You will see on page 24 of the report that we are proposing the lowest council tax percentage increase of our partners, and overall we will collect the second lowest in value terms. I am also pleased to advise that through my discussions with the S151 officer, a new council tax guide is being produced, and this will be published on the website as demands start to hit. This will enable us to raise better awareness of our council tax position with residents. Officers are on hand to answer any questions and queries members may have. I now pass over to the officers.
Did you want to?
Well, I'd like to make some comments on the report, if I may, and with particular reference to making some comments on the task we're asked to do is to, I don't know whether it's to approve or confirm the council tax for the police commissioner. Is this the time that I'm able to make comments on that?
I think the officers should present the report first and then you have the opportunity to comment.
Okay. Mrs Bingham, would you like to give us a report, please?
Councillor Charlesworth has said this is a statutory report and the wording is prescribed. Members now have a copy of an additional page that sets out the table that is at paragraph 1.8 on page 24 again, but this time with the monetary values of our precepting partner increases also set out. A final point, I must point out on page 21, recommendation D, the table at the bottom there, which lists the Leicestershire County Council precepts for next year, which were approved by County Council yesterday evening, are a penny different due to rounding issues on bands A, F and H. So on those bands, in fact, the precepts agreed were 1 penny lower than what is published here, and on the advice of the monitoring officer this evening, I'm just to report that verbally to you. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kaufman, is there anybody else?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think this evening is appropriate to point out that around our part of the borough, we're having an absolute plague of house burglaries. People living in our part of Oakley every night wake up to hear reports that their house has been broken into and the police making very little progress in capturing the people who are doing it. And people are saying to me, what we do need is more policemen and less police commissioner. So it led me to do some research, Your Worship, and I discovered that the police commissioner's office costs £1.6 million. The increase this year over the expenditure last year is about £200,000. Now, we won't talk about the fact that they've recently had to pay £56,000 out by an industrial tribunal for some of the work that he's done and wasted money over that one. And we won't discuss the problems of his assistant that he seems to have appointed, a former member of the constabulary who is undergoing investigation. That we won't talk about this evening. But what people are saying to me, the police commissioner's system, nobody votes for, the turnout is even lower than the turnouts that we get. It's costing a lot of money, and with this 1.6 million, we could have at least 25 extra policemen in Leicestershire. And instead of that, since 2015, we have 68 less PCSOs. And now people are saying, give us more policemen, take away the police commissioner. If we look at the paper we've got this evening, the cost of running our contribution to running the police force in a Band D house is dearer than the cost of running this council and all the services it provides. So what I am saying this evening is the police commissioner experiment brought in by the Conservative government several years ago has failed. And I know our friends, our colleagues who are representing the Conservative Party have very little influence over national government because they published that in a leaflet that I saw in Blaby where they're saying, please vote for us locally in the local elections. We're nothing to do with the national government. I wouldn't believe I've ever seen that, but that's what we've actually seen. So reluctantly, I'm obviously going to have to vote for this report this evening. But I do ask our colleagues representing the Conservative Party to do what they can do to help us to provide more police to make our homes safe in Oakley. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I firstly thank you all the officers in bringing this report to the table. Your Worship, the inflation reaching levels not seen for 40 years, cost of living crisis, and increased pressure on our frontline services. Local authorities up and down the country are setting their council tax in some of the most difficult circumstances seen for decades, I should say. And it is worth noting that, as Councillor Charlesworth mentioned, that even though we have to increase our council tax in line with the government recommendation, our percentage increase is one of the lowest compared to our partners, which is 2.99%. And we only keep 11% of the council tax that we collect on behalf of all the other partners. And that makes us one of the most cost-effective and efficient council in whole of the county. Chair, Your Worship, the question I would like to ask, some time ago we decided as an authority that in terms of the council tax bills, we will be sending interim bills to new developments and those residents who are waiting for valuation on their properties, so that they're not faced with hefty bills once the valuation of their property, to which band is going to go to, is decided. Is there any update on that?
Thank you, Worship. I don't have an update on me this evening, but I can obtain that for you. Councillor Hack can forward that on.
Thank you.
Councillor Lloydell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify a couple of points I made with what Councillor Quinn has said with regards to the PCC. As you know, I was on a panel, the PCC panel, and a fortnight ago we met to set the budget. Sadly, the Police and Crime Commissioner admitted that he's going to cut 100 police officers. And also it means that the new Chief Constable is now charged with cutting policing staff by a further 8%. So now you can see where we're going when we talk about more police on the beat. I don't think that's going to happen under this Conservative government. Sadly, what happens is I challenge the police EC with regards to his office, because while the police budget is being cut, police numbers are being cut, his department is growth to a tune of £64,000. What I suggested was, because he's employed a deputy police and crime commissioner at £58,000 per year, I then suggested that that post be deleted. Remember, it's 58,000 plus on costs. Be deleted, which would then save the increase of £64,000 in his budget. Conservative colleagues wouldn't support that. So therefore, it went through. Equally, then said, what about your efficiency savings? What are you going to do about that? Because your department is growing, the police department is shrinking under his stewardship. Again, it's this blame culture, isn't it? It's nothing to do with me, Gov. We are the lowest police force funded in the country. You know, like the county council keeps saying year on year, after 20 odd years plus, they are the lowest funded county council in the country. He's jumped on the bandwagon now saying the same thing. Stop increasing your budget and stop charging the taxpayer more and more each year. For example, 56% core funded, it's now 44% levied at the local taxpayer. That's 14% increase already, because more and more is being levied at us locally. It's not sustainable. You mentioned the removal of an independent panel. He admitted, I challenged him as well, at £56,000 cost. His answer was, if it had gone further, it would have cost the taxpayer even more. So there's an admission there. He did, and I challenged him. It should have come back to the panel. He should have mentioned it through the panel. We could have saved that money, but he did it on his own volition, independently, and ignored the panel completely, which I found quite offensive, because the panel's there to hold him to account. who's there, I think is to a certain degree holds the panel in contempt, which is not good. So it's not just the 57 is wasted, but it's a 64,000 growth and an increase in his staff while the police services are being cut. I think that's important to remember that, because we're going to the future. There are less and less police on the beach. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Record it in the papers that I've got. Anybody wants any evidence of that? I've got it.
Okay. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm also truly dismayed by the amount of robberies that are happening, the burglaries that are plaguing Obi at the moment. And I also take on board what you said about the Crime Commissioner. That's certainly some questions that I can put forward into my party. But also, I don't want to politicise this situation. I feel right at the very core of this, we have people that are desperate. They want to see our police out there on the street. And please don't forget, they're doing a really, really good job. They're working desperately hard to instill that confidence back into our community. And I think that is also at the heart of what we're doing. So I would like to work cross-party lines and really getting a hand on this. And I'll certainly take those comments that have been made to the Police and Crime Commissioner. I'd like to also just go back to the report as well, please. For many years, at the delight of our residents, this council has frozen council tax for so many years. And my simple question to the officers is what cumulative impact has that had on the current financial situation that we are right now? Thank you.
Tracy.
Okay.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Allen. And as you know, you asked me this question earlier and I provided you with some information. So the foregone income as a result of council tax freeze between 2012-13 and 2015-16, net of grant income that came from central government called the council tax freeze grant, is the foregone income to date is 3.42 million. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else? Yeah. No, okay. Would you like to respond to Councillor Hack's question as well?
Thank you, Worship. So Councillor Hack, I've had a response from the officer responsible for council tax collection just now. He has said that the team are now all aware on how to get a temporary banding for properties that are delayed in terms of being banded by the valuation office. However, he's also said that the valuation office is now more up to date with their processes, and usually the banding of properties is done within a week. We've not had to use that new banding temporary banding mechanism, but the officers are aware on how to use it if necessary.
Okay. Councillor Charlesworth, did you want to pose this?
Yes, thank you. If there are no more speakers, just to respond.
No.
Yes, thank you for everybody who's contributed. Again, thank you to the officers for the report. I take the councillor's view on the freeze on council tax, which I believe nearly every local authority took. I mean, my perception of it was a bribe from a dysfunctional government for political purposes. It didn't help any local authority in that. My estimates are that the county council has lost well in excess of £100 million because they took the freeze all those years as well, as did every local authority, the majority of which were Conservative. It didn't help anybody in the long run. I understand why it was done, and it helped the residents out there in the short term. Long term is we're all struggling now. So I'll end my comments there. Thank you.
Have we got a seconder?
Second it.
You're going to second it. You want to do it then?
Yeah, that's
Okay
not
then.
pull it out with anyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, I believe my Councillor Charlesworth moved this report and that Councillor Kaufman had seconded it. And in accordance with the Local Authority Standing Order England Amendment Regulations 2014, there is a requirement for a recorded vote on setting the council tax. Mr Hunt will call out your names individually. So you're voting for the recommendation to set the council tax. Could you please answer for, against or abstain? Thank you, Mr Hunt.
Councillor Rosemary Adams.
For.
Councillor Lee Dance.
Against.
Councillor Lee Bentley. For. Councillor Bill Balson. For. Councillor John Boyce. For. Councillor David Carter. For. Councillor Michael Chancellor. For. Councillor Lateef Dowd. For. Councillor Dean Gamble. For. Councillor Gatarayan.
Against.
Councillor Samia Hatt.
For.
Councillor Chrissy Joshi.
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey Kaufman.
For.
Councillor Lily Kaufman.
For.
Councillor Claire Kozlowski.
For.
Councillor David Lydall.
For.
Councillor Helen Lydall.
For.
Councillor Kevin Lydall.
For.
Councillor Ian Ridley.
For.
So you want to know that? 16 and 3.
Okay. We have 16 for and 3 against.
I wonder.
That has been moved by Councillor Charlesworth, seconded by Councillor Kaufman, that the recommendations be approved. Okay. So now we come on to agenda item 12. And I believe Councillor Charlesworth would like to speak on that one.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 12, Budget and Medium-Term Financial Strategy. Again, as Chair of Policy, Finance and Development Committee, it is my duty to present this report, and I formally move the recommendations set out on pages 26 and 27. The report asks members to approve the Council's General Fund and Housing Revenue Account, revenue budgets and capital programmes. It also asks members to have regard to the Section 151 Officer's Statement. The budget was presented to PFDC on the 7th of February and sets out now only further final changes alongside the consultation responses received on the public budget consultation undertaken between December and January. The General Fund. On the General Fund, the budget for next year will be...
Fine.
We should have a fund.
I'll speak to you later. On the General Fund, the budget for next year will be balanced through the use of 430,000 earmarked reserves. I'm pleased to advise that the budget position is better than originally anticipated when Council considered the budget on the 13th of December. Unfortunately, we've had very little extra in funding as a result of the settlement, and in fact the settlement has seen district councils come out as the most poorly funded of all local government. Equally disappointing, it is only a one-year settlement. The medium-term financial plan on the General Fund now shows a budget gap of 2.6 million over the 5 years to 2028. In terms of managing this future budget gap, members have already approved a sustainability plan and officers are taking this forward to deliver savings and manage expenditure within our funding means. As the Section 151 points out in her note, our reserves position is adequate for 2023-24. The HRA account. On the HRA, council house rents are proposed to increase by 7% in line with the government's national rent increase cap and will take the average HRA rent to £95.70 per week. Based on a review of PFD in February, the proposed HRA budget looks to recover 100% of the 225% increase in forecast heating costs through heating charges levied to tenants. This will be reviewed quarterly going forward. The position for next year on the HRA overall is a deficit being met from reserves of 391,000. This is mostly a one-off deficit, and the medium-term outlook will improve once inflation and rent increases align in the future. Reserves on the HRA remain sufficient for next year and also beyond. Capital. On our proposed capital programmes, the report presents a fully funded general fund and HRA capital programme for 23-24. In particular, I'm delighted to draw attention to a specific investment of £500,000 on match funding as part of the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. This project will upgrade 130 homes and will enable the council to understand how it can roll out energy efficiency measures to all council homes in the future. In summary, I am delighted to present this budget. I will now hand over to our 151 officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report before you, as has been outlined, is to approve the proposed final budget. Included in the appendices is the response we made to the government's consultation on funding, along with a funding outlook document that we have produced that sets out our unique and adverse funding outlook and how spending power has fallen behind for this borough. This document has been shared widely with key sector colleagues and also discussed with the MP's office. Overall, there is a budget gap on the general fund for next year of 480,000, and there are ongoing budget gaps presented each year over the medium-term financial plan. On the housing revenue account, as has been said, there is a budget gap next year of just over 300,000. There is then a small budget gap the following year, to which then the HRA reverts to generating surpluses over the remaining medium-term position. In section 13 of the report, I set out my section 25 statement. This is a requirement under the Local Government Act for me as section 151 officer to report to members on the robustness of estimates and the adequacy of reserves. I've assessed the estimates in this budget and believe them to be robust. However, based on the level of risk faced by the council and the planned use of reserves in this current year on the general fund, I deem the reserves to be now outside of the safe tolerance level. In addition, my report highlights recommendations from the auditors in their latest annual auditor's report, and that report will be delivered to council in April. It went to the audit committee at the end of January. The auditor's report concludes that the council should close the budget gaps by not relying on reserves and to progress with the delivery of the sustainability plan. Given that there are projected budget gaps each year of the medium-term forecast, my statement concludes that this is the single biggest risk that the council faces, and as such, the senior leadership team and members will focus on delivering the sustainability plan and closing the budget gaps. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any questions? No?
Councillor Lloyd.
Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, it's probably to the chairman, really. Page 29, 3.6. Settlement is again 1 year allocation, which is not helpful for planning purposes. Mention the audit committee, chair. We just quote from something that they are saying in support of that. That is, it is noted that the 1 year settlement and the delays in the fair funding review, business rates, reset of the new owners' bonus increases uncertainty with what we're trying to achieve when it talks about 1 year settlement. It also goes on to talk about this impacts on the service delivery in the future. So it's recognised through that system, does the chairman agree, that if it carries on like this, then we'll have to take some serious implications with regards to, I have to thank the officers for this, because all of this, the officers have gone through and really provided the services for the residents of this borough, all through these difficult circumstances, and they need to be congratulated and not pilloried, because it's all been foisted upon them. And when you talk about from 2011 to now, there's been over £2 million taken away from this council. Again, that's recorded in the audit papers. Same with the Police and Crime Commissioner. From the police point of view, there's been £38 million taken out of their budget since 2011. Now you know what we have to put up with and what we're facing. I think that if we work together, there is an evil amongst us, and that's a Conservative government. If we work together to do something about this, then the residents are going to benefit wholeheartedly. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I would like to thank the officers for their hard work in bringing this budget to the table. Your Worship, saving 2 million by 2025-26 is an eye-watering sum and a stark illustration of the constraint this authority is working under. We have a legal obligation, a civic duty to our residents to balance our budget. And balancing a budget relies as much on capital investments as it does on revenue savings. Resilience will be key in the next coming weeks, months, and years, something this authority knows very well. We have a very ambitious capital programme, and through that we will make our borough one of the best places to live, work and visit, and we'll continue with that ambition. Thank you, Your Worship.
So, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to draw members' attention to page 30, table 1, Sustainability Plan, Programme and Project. In one of the themes, there's the asset management, and I'd just like to know what assets will be starting to be considered. Will we have an idea of that? Because we know that swimming pool, that's one asset that is now been reviewed and sold. Are there any other assets that are going to be reviewed? Will we know about them in the future? That's my question.
Tracy, do you want me to take that, because that's fine?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. The basic position, Councillor Allen, is that every asset that belongs to the council will be reviewed to find out whether they're on a cost-benefit analysis, it is worth remaining in the council's ownership, or whether there is a better plan by disposing of the property and producing a capital receipt.
Thank you.
Any more? Okay.
Councillor Boyce.
Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I just make one slight comment? On page 31, item 5.4, there is one way of summing up this council's position, which is we benefited from roughly £500,000 additional income. We've saved £1.5 million. The funding pressure is £2.5 million, and therefore we're just at something like £430,000 having to take out of reserves. How any organisation balances their books based on those situations is extremely challenging. I absolutely support the report.
Yeah. Can we have a mover for this? Somebody move this, please? Councillor Charles. And a seconder.
Councillor Charlesworth. Do you want to speak, Councillor Charlesworth? Sorry.
As is my right, yes please, Your Worship. Yeah, thank you for all the comments again, thank you to the officers. I'm generally an optimistic person, but the future is a concern. We only got a 1-year settlement. The government we've got at the moment is doing nothing but firefighting and is at best dysfunctional. I think local government is one of their least worries at the moment, which is pretty sad. The future, I just don't know what's going to happen in the future. We know we're in the middle of an economic crisis, partly because of something called a fiscal event we may have had. But But I do remain optimistic. The officers do their very best. I believe councillors do their very best. We're all residents of this borough and we all want the best for this borough. And I think we do a pretty good job. You know, I've been here nearly 20 years now. Whether I'll be here again after May, that's up to the electorate. But I think we do the best for the people we live and work amongst. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Sorry, Your Worship, was that you formally moving the report, please, Councillor Charlwood?
Let me just check my papers.
I think that's a yes.
Yes, I thought
Got you down.
recommendations in
Thank you.
And I believe Councillor Ridley was going to second that. Okay. No, it's been moved by Councillor Charlesworth, seconded by Councillor Ridley, that the recommendations be approved.
All those in favour? Thank you.
Okay.
Those against? Abstentions? Thank you. So that's passed. That's 16-4, none against, 3 abstentions.
Yeah, okay, the next item is, okay, we go to item 13, and I believe again, Councillor Charles wishes to speak.
I do, thank you. Need a drink after this. Item 13, Treasury Management Policy and Strategies and Prudential Indicators. I move the recommendations on page 115. This report asks members to approve a range of financial strategies required by regulations relating to how we manage cash and financing of expenditure. As a billing authority, we collect significant values of business rates and council tax on behalf of our precepting partners, as well as our own funds, which means we collect well above 50 million a year. If only we could keep it. This brings with it treasury responsibilities whilst we hold that cash. We also have some significant capital projects on the go at any time, and so at times need to undertake short-term borrowing. These strategies before you this evening are presented annually to Council, and there are no significant changes this year, except to update the numbers in line with this new year's budget. Given the specialist nature of managing cash and investments, we have a Treasury advisor, Arling Close Limited, who provide the Section 151 officer with advice on all Treasury matters. Finally, regular reports on Treasury management activity in year are presented to PFD, who fulfil the monitoring role in this important aspect of what counts as financial management. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation, and I head to Head of Finance, Beth Ball. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, councillors. So this report includes the capital strategy, including the prudential indicators at Appendix 1. It includes treasury management policy strategy plan, including treasury management indicators, Appendix 2 and 3. It includes the minimum revenue provision statement at Appendix 4, and it includes the investment strategy at Appendix 5, and the flexible use of capital receipt strategy at Appendix 6. So all of those must be reviewed and be approved to comply with the Local Government Act 2003, the CITFA Prudential Code, CITFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management, the DLUC Statutory Guidance on Local Government Investments, and the DLUC Statutory Guidance on the Minimum Revenue Provision. So as such, these reports are presented annually to full council for approval. The strategy ensures the capital programme is prudent, affordable and sustainable, and includes a number of prudential indicators to be set and then monitored against throughout the year. Treasury management is about the management of the council's cash flow, its borrowing and its investments and the associated risks. The council is more of a borrower than an investor, and that's the strategy that we will be taking forward for the year ahead. We continue to manage our borrowing through short-term borrowing, which is more cost-effective, it costs less than borrowing longer term, and we'll keep that position under review. In 2021, CITFA revised the Treasury Management Code and the Prudential Code, and those codes are effective from 23-24. So as a result of those revisions, we've had to include a new debt liability benchmark as a Treasury indicator, and reference to consideration of environmental, social and governance policy when assessing counterparties for investments, and a requirement to report on Treasury management on a quarterly basis, which we'll address through including Treasury management section, quarterly budget monitoring reports, So none of the changes have had any significant impact. Thank you, Your Worship.
Have you got any questions? No?
For the second.
Okay, can we have a seconder, please? Councillor Hack. It has been moved by Councillor Charlesworth, seconded by Councillor Hack, that the recommendations be approved. Can we put it to the vote, please? All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions?
Unanimous.
No, it's unanimous. Okay.
It is.
Okay. We go next to agenda item 14, the pay policy statement.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report sets out the Council's pay policy statement for 2023 to 24. Councils are required to produce a statement and publish on an annual basis. The pay policy statement is set out in Appendix 1, and the recommendation to Council is to approve this. The pay award for 2023-24 has yet to be settled. Once this happens, the statement will be updated and brought back to Council for approval. The statement is in the standard format and sets out the Council's pay structure, particularly in relation to the remuneration levels across the structure. It also sets out where the Council has exercised its discretion, and this is in relation to the pension scheme. Appendix 2 sets out where the Council has agreed to exercise its discretion in relation to the local government pension scheme. A number of years ago, the Council approved to committed to paying the real living wage, which is higher than the minimum national wage and the national living wage and the national minimum wage. The recommendation to Council is to continue this commitment in 2023-24.
Got any questions?
Move.
Councillor Charles. Move.
Councillor Charlesworth, move it. Can we have a seconder, please?
Councillor Move.
Councillor Lloyd. Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Charlesworth, seconded by Councillor Lloyd, that the recommendations be approved. Put it to vote, please. All those in favour?
They don't want to pay this stuff.
Against? And abstain. Okay, it's been passed. We've got agenda item number 15, the approval of Leicestershire Resources and Waste Strategy. And we ask Mr Wells to speak on that, please.
Thank you, Worship, and good evening, everyone. This report seeks approval for a Leicestershire Resources and Waste Strategy for them from 2022 to 2050. Final version you can find is attached to Appendix 1. It has been produced following work by the Leicestershire Waste Partnership, and it follows extensive public consultation last year. As you can see, the main focus is on waste reduction and increased recycling and reuse. The changes from the document brought before members in December 2021 are as follows. Slight changes with the wording around the pledges, inclusion of an additional pledge to tackle fly tipping, a detailed action plan which will remain a living document for the delivery of the pledges and to steer the future work of the partnership, and a number of caveats within the strategy around delivering pending government decisions on food waste and funding, the introduction of extended producer responsibilities, and the positive return scheme. The report also recommends the Leicestershire Waste Partnership continues with appropriate representation to deliver environmental benefits, reduce costs, and to avoid cost shunting between organisations. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
I've got Councillor Kaufman, you wanted to speak to it first?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. If I see something relating to Leicestershire County Council and the any waste strategy, I get concerned that what it means is there's less going to happen to please the residents. I already see quite separately that under this government, our rivers are full of poo, and all high standards that we thought we'd have in seasides and drinking water has let go. So whenever I see this, I get concerned. I believe I'm right, but when I read the plans for this review, the Leicestershire County Council refused to discuss the future of weekly recycling. In fact, if I remember, they were talking about 3 weekly recycling, if you're lucky, and 2 weekly recycling. So I think my question is, are we going to have to fight even harder to keep weekly bin collections and recycling here? Also, I heard from our colleague, our county councillor, yesterday that he learned from the county council that we're about to have a review of the recycling centres in Leicestershire. Now, when the Tories normally have a review, it means that something's going to cut and we're going to lose a service that we've valued for years. So we've already had our recycling centres had their hours cut, which leads to more opportunities for people dumping. And more opportunities for tipping. So I think my question is, does this strategy make it more or less likely that we will be in a position to continue our weekly bin collections in the next 10 years?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Kaufman. I think with regard to weekly collections, that is something that we continue to look at from a point of view of our service reviews and ensuring that we deliver the most cost-effective service that we possibly can to our residents. So whilst we can't guarantee that weekly bin collections will continue, and we can't guarantee what legislation government may be forthcoming with to actually deliver on those either.
Councillor Charlesworth wanted to speak.
Thank you. No, officers can't give guarantees, of course not. Members decide what happens with services, not officers. So let's be clear on that. I have absolutely no intention of moving from weekly refuse collection whatsoever. This report does raise a few concerns for me. The emissions to begin with, it would have been nice to see collection figures in terms of residual waste and recycling, because as I understand it, this authority has one of the lowest residual per household weights in the county. But I couldn't see those figures. And it didn't mention our weekly collections. It mentions in the future an equitable system across the county. Yeah, well, we need to see what that equitable system actually looks like before we have any go at it. Garden waste, if that's to be free as a government request, they will need to fund it completely. Food waste collection, again, I know we had a previous trial in 3 or 4 of our wards previously. If we're going to do food waste, which I know is the biggest contribution to residual waste by weight, then they're going to have to fund that fully as well. So there are concerns here, but let's move it forward. We need a strategy. We need to see what the future looks like. But let me just reiterate, members make decisions, and weekly refuse collection on my book stops. Thank you.
Councillor Bolter and then Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, this is an interesting document. I was on the working parties for this, and I kept saying that Opening Wixon has a weekly waste collection service, but they refused to put it in the document. When they went out to consultation, they refused to consult on weekly collection throughout the county. And that's why we actually did our own survey about weekly collection, and our residents overwhelmingly said they want a weekly collection. So we will continue to do what our residents want us to do. That's the point of consultation. The county consultation was not terribly well supported, and when they suggested 3-week collection, like some districts are possibly moving to, that seemed to go down like a lead balloon as well. So I don't know quite where they're going to end up with this one. The whole point of this is, if we've got to do more recycling and collections, it must be fully funded by central government. Not just for 2 years, but continually. Because local authorities cannot afford to do all these things. I mean, they're talking about not charging for garden waste. Only one authority doesn't charge for garden waste, North West Leicestershire. Everybody else charges for garden waste. Different degrees, I accept, but ours is midway between all of them. £50 a year, ours is midway, which is a reasonable charge, and it's cost effective for what we have to do to get rid of it. We bet everybody go and recycling it home and compost bins, but that's not going to happen, is it? In the densely populated area that we have here, it's perhaps not feasible for many people to do that. With regards to other things, yes, responsibility for the supplier should come automatically. They should get away with it at the end of the day. They should be responsible for that. What concerns me is the new legislation that's come in about domestic furniture, the POPs bit, where we can no longer collect that at the same time as fridges and freezers. It has to be a separate vehicle. We can't collect it if there's any torn fabric on those, it has to be sealed. So try and explain to residents, you put your settee out, if it's got a tear in it, we can't pick it up. You've got to seal that before we can pick it up. And this is extra cost based on local authorities all the way through, with no extra money from central government. So these things, will work out in time, I'm sure, but it must be fully funded. And I also objected to the word pledge at the very beginning, because if that means you say you're going to do it, some of these things I'm very sceptical that they ever come off. So to pledge you're going to do something, I think is a little bit naive, because some things without our control. So I'll wait for the information to come from central government. Been waiting now for months for it, which we haven't got, and I don't know when it's going to come out. So this document is sort of pending that information coming out. So with that, I'll let Mr. Wells continue. But I've had my say at county. But somewhere in this document, can we refer it back to county, say that Oadby and Wixton has a weekly collection of refuse and recycling, because they refuse to put it in. I think it's important we actually make that note. Thank you.
Councillor Joshi.
Thank you, Worship. My comment really is around, thank you very much for the paper, Mr. Wells. The concern is, I think when things do change, I think they change for the better. I'm a glass half full person myself. So what we need to look at is, what are they going to do with the waste rather than the weekly collections, etc. We collect, but what are we actually doing with the waste? There's a scientific way of getting rid of waste. That's come in the papers recently, biochar for the human food that we get rid of. You can burn the landfill stuff and get rid of the ashes somehow. So have they looked, or has the partnership looked at other ways of disposing of waste, really, rather than the traditional way? I think it's looking at what we want to get from the end result rather than starting from having these collections. What do we do with them? It's about what we're going to do with that waste rather than the other way around.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Joshi. I think there are a number of factors here, because obviously the government's putting certain burdens upon the local authority that Councillor Bolt has mentioned. One of the key drivers at the moment is they're looking to actually regenerate energy from waste. So there's a new facility going near Shepshed, Newhurst, which you're welcome to visit when it's open. And that will be take a lot of what formerly would have gone to landfill and it will be incinerated, but the energy that's generated from that process will then power a lot of the area around that area, and that's the way going forward. A couple of the other things are around more recycling capacity, so curbside collection is taking more and more recyclables, making sure products are recyclable when they're produced. So, your bottle tops, we change them, so they're all sort of like plain, so you can't tell what variety you've got, because they're more recyclable than the coloured ones were. So there's this extended producer responsibility, so don't produce as much packaging. So at Amazon, you don't want 14 boxes for one little container. So there's an obligation on the producers. So hopefully the packaging reduces, we get more recycle ourselves, but also we have more facilities available. So that relies on like council for the household waste sites, do they accept more? Also looking at actually possible reuse. So you're taking an old bike and rather than it just being scrapped, rebuilt into another bike, for example, and things like that. So there are a number of factors involved and a lot of work going on in the background.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Your Worship. Waste is too big a term. This is actually not about waste, this is about system change. This is about actually changing the way we live. Yes, it's true, we have weekly collections. It doesn't actually matter whether they're weekly, fortnightly, 3 weeks or never. What matters is that what's required to be collected is collected when it's needed. Now, absolutely right, this issue of fabric, which, whatever it's called, ops, whatever that may mean, is a real problem. And how we dispose of it needs significant thought. Simply saying to a resident, it has to be sealed, I'm not sure makes that much sense, because I don't think residents will understand the problem, therefore why should they buy into the solution? But I think the most important point, Switzerland have a recycling rate of 98.5%. So you can actually do it. However, you do it by gradual change, you do it by change of the way you live. And that is a big challenge. In terms of food waste, it would make very little difference to me, because actually I disagree with Councillor Bolter. I actually do compost the vast majority of my food waste. I also recycle more, and I've got an extremely small bin which is rarely full. The point is we need to change our buying habits as well as our disposal habits. But these are big issues. These are not for this council alone, these are for this country. And I think the way the county have approached it is in danger of making it divisive, in danger of making it bureaucratic, and in danger of missing the point, which is actually it's about system change for us all.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to try and abate some of Councillor Cochrane's concerns. He talks about what's going to happen next, what could potentially happen with this partnership. Cast your mind back to green waste. We're charging more for less. And we can't continue doing that as a council. So what I'm going to suggest is, yes, this is a better way of working forward. I agree, working in partnership with other authorities. Hopefully it will help our situation and hopefully curb the situation that we've got with so much recycling. That's what I've got to say. Thank you.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Worship. Reading this report, it inspires me in some ways, but it depresses me in others. As I read the report, it is very aspirational. But I wonder about the honesty of what the counts of the partnership are trying to achieve. I look at section number 4 and it talks about a pledge to continue to improve the collection of items for reuse. However, I look at that and from personal experience, I know that I went to the tip the other day and there was a beautiful bike in the skip. I was told, oh no, we can't save things like that. So I'm not even sure that they're starting that process. So I think it can be a little bit misleading. It is aspirational and there's lots of good things within this. However, the thing that it predicates on is adequate funding. I think Councillor Charlesworth has already mentioned that. In order to do these things, we need the funding. So it's all very well government setting these targets and telling us what to do, but we also need the funding that goes with it. So my question really, I think, is how can we, question really to the government, to our colleagues on the right, both politically and geographically in this chamber, what are you going to be doing to encourage your government to give us adequate funding to achieve these aspirational targets? Thank you, Your Honour.
Councillor Sawtrey?
Thank you, Your Worship. My answer isn't to your question, Councillor Carter, as yet, but what I would like to say is we're holding on about money, but there's a lot of organisations that could do what we want them to do. It's a mindset change. At the end of the day, it's not about us saying, you've got to do this that way, you've got to do it this way. You've got to change the mindset of our residents and the country. That's the only way to do it. And the only way we can do that is by education, and it starts from schools. So we have to start with schools and start programmes with schools about the littering that goes on, the recycling. Certainly we can recycle more. But we're not going to have plastic packaging because that's been taken away for takeaways. Martin the punt. And you know, the government, as you say, what are they doing? What are they paying? Well, whatever they do, they do. We're working from a local level that we've got to start looking at smaller fish first. Let's get our place in order. Let's get our residents doing what they're doing, because I don't think we recycle as much as we can at the moment. You know, Japan are already incinerating their waste and chucking it. Why are we not doing something similar to that? Hydrogen fuel is another option. That's already been tested, and you know that works. The only byproduct of that is water. So I think installation is all about a mindset change. So we can't keep sitting here and just saying money. Yes, we need money, but we have to make sure that we have enough to be able to do certain things. Education doesn't cost a lot, if in fact anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ridley?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've got to be careful because my electricity cable's under the desk here. My concern about this, one of the solutions that's being proposed to the waste problem is incineration. If we generate, just simply burning stuff is not a solution. You've got to find a site for these incinerators. There's all sorts of harmful byproducts. There's costs involved. And at the end of the day, you're burning something that's been created. Better thing to do is for government to be proactive with producers, and if necessary through legislation, to reduce packaging and reduce waste that way. The market isn't king here. We've seen that with the environment. We see it with big oil companies and so on. There is a role for the state here, and I'm very sadly to say that over the decades, successive governments have not taken the action they should have done on the environment.
I don't know where you
Councillor Josh.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Councillor Ridley, but I do disagree with you completely about incineration. There are many scientific methods that have been innovated recently which allow for incineration without throwing everything out into the air. They're captured and they're disposed of in a scientific manner. So thank you.
Councillor Hack, please. And we'll draw it to a close.
Thank you, Your Worship. As it has been said, that this report is very ambitious, and I agree with Councillor Carter's comments. My question again is that the government promised during COVID that local authorities will be compensated for every pound they spend on COVID expenditure. Now we've been promised that we will be compensated for our food waste collection. My question is how my colleagues in opposition are going to make sure that we are compensated and their government keeps to their promise if we are to implement these changes.
That's for any more speakers.
Have we got any more speakers? That was an interesting topic.
We need a mover. A second.
Okay, can we have a mover, please?
Can I make a point, Mayor, that somewhere in this document that we refer to Oban Wixton having weekly refuse and recycling, that where it goes in, but somewhere in this document, so it is recorded.
I think, can we just come back on that?
Yeah.
I'll come back on that. Thank you, Your Worship. The issue is, Councillor Bolger, that this is a joint document prepared by all members of the Waste Partnership. We can request that it goes in, but unfortunately we can't insist. And if it's not in there, my question to you is the document still acceptable? Because if it's not, without it, then I'm afraid I don't think you'll be able to move it tonight or deal with it if you're insistent upon that going into the document.
It's very interesting because I raised this at the county level. They said it must be raised here this evening, including the document. They won't do it at county level. It had to be the district to include that, not in county.
We can certainly make the request and insert it, but as I say, if county don't accept it, then where does that leave the document? Because if you're saying it's approved with that insertion, there needs to be a fallback position if that insertion is not put in.
Charles, did you speak?
Yes, I did. Unfortunately, Councillor Bolter has already tried at county to get this little piece of information into no success, but we're not surprised about that. It can't be shoved in the document now by us alone tonight and then go out to the rest of the partners without their approval. I think that presents problems. But what we can do is have recommendation D, that this council notes that Oban and Wixton has a weekly refuse and recycling collection, and if anybody in the Waste Partnership should see these minutes and the recommendations, they will be fully appraised of what we do here.
Are you happy with that?
Councillor Boyce, did you want to?
No. I was going to say, Your Worship, that seems a sensible solution. And are you moving the report with that amendment, Councillor Charlesworth?
I am.
Thank you. Did Councillor Boyce now want to come back?
Did you?
I'm content now to say.
Second, thank you, Councillor Boyce. Yes.
Okay. It's been moved by Councillor.
Your Worship, I wonder this is being recorded and it's a bit unclear to me. This is being recorded and it's a bit unclear to me exactly the amendment. So I wonder if somebody would be kind enough to read the amendment out so that it's clear to anybody.
I defer to Councillor Charlesworth.
Councillor Charlesworth.
For the benefit of Councillor Kaufman, recommendation D is that we note that this authority has a weekly refuse and recycling collection. Simple as that.
Okay.
Any more? Okay, it's moved by Councillor Charlesworth, seconded by Councillor Boyce.
the recommendation
That-
and the...
that the recommendation with the amendment be approved. All in favour?
Thank you,
Oh, yeah.
Worship. That's unanimous.
Okay. Okay, so it's unanimous. Can we move on now to agenda item 16? The interim review of polling districts, places and stations. And we've got Mr Ball to report on this, please.
This report presents to Council the final arrangements being proposed by the returning officer in respect of the polling districts, places and stations to be used at elections and referendums within the borough. The proposals have taken into account the two representations we received during the interim review consultation that took place between the 9th of January and the 10th of February. The returning officer is proposing no changes to the polling arrangements except for one temporary relocation of one of the two polling stations in polling district G from Coombe Park Pavilion to Parklands Leisure Centre to ensure that the spaces that we provide are both compliant with the pre-existing requirements of the Electoral Commission and with the new requirements introduced by the Elections Act 2022 in terms of photo ID and accessibility. The recommendations are on page 230. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford.
I understand why the officers are recommending this, but as far as the Brox Hill polling station and one that's proposed to be held in Parklands, I have had complaints from residents who have to walk to it, that from the bus stop or from the highway, it's a long walk to go and vote. And I would have liked, and I understand the problems with the Coombe Park one, but that's just manageable. And I would have liked, for the convenience of people and residents, to ask one of the schools, Gartrey or Beecham or the primary school there, to use and to have one polling place. I think it's unreasonable to expect people without public transport who like to vote in person to have to go all the way up to the Parklands in order to vote. So I've made that point to the officers and I think this decision is a wrong decision.
Councillor Ridley.
Thank you, Worship. This might be slightly, I'm not quite sure, because very quickly double checking the paperwork here. The solution to the issue of parking at Brox Hill proposed in the paper. Can I ask if that would apply to polling station Trinity Methodist Church in St Peter's Ward as well? Because the car park adjacent to that ward is district and that's company charges.
Do you want me to answer? Thank you, Councillor Ridley. Yes, we are aware of that, and what we intend to do is outside of the Trinity Church in the car park, there's some designated disabled bays and then a number of parking bays. They will be marked off as for polling purposes only.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make it clear with regards to some of the new houses on the Grange ward, those 310 houses, and some of them started being occupied. Where would it be clear to them as to where their polling district would be and whether they'll be able to register for a vote as well?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, they're perfectly entitled to register for a vote, and we're going through that process. They will receive a polling card. The polling card will tell them where they have to vote, and there will be a boundary review, i.e. a review of the wards areas, which is going to be starting later this year and going into next year to take account of the fact that we've got this recent development and some of the wards are much larger than the others.
Sorry.
Just to clarify what Mr Gill has said, there's a formal review of districts which are subdivisions of polling areas within the ward, which will be reviewed. The actual looking at the actual boundaries themselves for the wards is something for the Local Government England Boundary Commission, which will cover at a later date, just to make that absolutely clear.
Yes, and I could just clarify that we've actually been in contact with the Boundary Commission and we are due to start that process later this year and into next year.
Yeah, just a question on identity. One of the approved identity cards by this government are the disabled badges. The problem is you need to take the disabled badge into the polling station to prove who you are. What happens to the cars who are parked in the car park where somebody takes their badge into the polling station? It's just one of the niceties that we're about to come across in May.
As I've just explained, certainly in respect of parklands, there will be a separate area set aside for parking. In East Street car park, the parking, disabled parking bays will be unenforceable. And secondly, in terms of the disabled badge, you can separate your badge from your wallet. It's quite simple to do and take it in with you. So they will leave their clock in the car, so to speak, and they will take their badge inside with them.
That's it. Right, can I have a mover, please, on this? Oh, got two. Can we have Councillor Carter and can we have Councillor Boyce as a seconder? Yes? Good. Sorry. It's been moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Boyce, that the recommendations be approved. All those in favour? Any objections? Any abstentions?
16 for, 2 abstentions.
Okay, so it has been passed. Yep, okay. Right, we move on to item agenda 17, the appointment of deputy electoral registration officers. Mr. Ball. Mr. Ball, please.
The report requests council to formally appoint 2 deputy electoral registration officers to support the electoral registration officer to provide resilience and to also take the workload as a result of the changes contained in the Elections Act 2022. The 2 proposed deputy CROs will be myself and Mr. Gill, and again, happy to take any questions.
Move the report.
No. Councillor Boyce moves it. Have we got a seconder?
Kozlowski.
Kozlowski. Okay then, it has been moved by Councillor Boyce, seconded by Councillor Kozlowski, that the recommendations be approved. All those in favour? Against?
You against or in favour, Your Worship? You were a bit slow.
What I'm doing, put any okey-dokey, I think. Any abstentions? No. Can we just have now, that's been passed, can we just now have the leader's announcement?
Thank you, Your Worship. As people will remember, on this particular occasion, I ought to go last because clearly we are a committee structure and committees make decisions here, not leaders, not cabinet members, but committees, and therefore it's appropriate to allow the committee leads to actually move the reports. I'm not going to keep long. I have a few things I would like to raise, and certainly out of tonight's meeting, I think there's a few things worth having just some moments talking about. 10 years ago, a nice man called Eric Pickles turned up. Interestingly, I think he did some good things. He got rid of what was a very bureaucratic, target-driven system introduced by the Labour Party. It's the problem of being around a bit. I've seen a lot of it. And from that point of view, Eric, I think, did quite well. And Yes, he did introduce a council tax freeze. That was rather interesting. Because you were in somewhat of a cleft stick. And literally every council in the country was caught in it. Which is, if you took the freeze, you actually froze the council tax base. The government actually did promise to protect us on that score. They didn't really do it, but they did protect us, say they'd protect us. So, from one side, we wanted to do what we could for our residents, and on the other side, we clearly then ended up as a collective actually paying the cost. The other thing that Eric did, he suggested that we were capable of making our own minds up. I think it's rational, allowed to operate like rational people, I think it was. And what that meant was that certain authorities, Thanet, I think being one, took the opportunity to invest somewhat speculatively in London to the tune of several billion in the end. Of course, Tory-led, but that was the problem. So what Eric did, he effectively said, go out and earn your own money. And if you look at where most of the investments that were done 10 years ago, they were done outside of the district of Whittle or even the county of which the authorities doing the investment were. So Leicestershire, if I remember rightly, owns a hotel somewhere up north. And Lichfield. Well, yeah, whatever. I mean, the point is that we weren't investing within, we were investing outside. That's complete nonsense as a system. You're not actually trying to make your own place better. Luckily, we actually didn't do too much of that, but we did end up suffering, as all districts suffered, because basically we got less and less money. And today, our financial situation really goes back to that point. Now, this evening, 3 members voted against the council tax rise. That's fine. I can live with that. What I can't live with is, of course, that they produce no alternative. And in the end, the alternative is what makes politics politics. I don't mind debating whether we should do this or that. That makes sense. But simply saying no makes no sense, because you have nothing to debate. In fact, all it is cheap point scoring. And that's a problem. Because actually they also abstained on council pay. So the obvious implication is that our council taxpayers shouldn't pay, our employees should pay, which actually very much reflects the view of the government.
Absolutely.
The NHS worked superbly through COVID. Let's not pay them so much. Let's allow inflation to erode their pay. Because that effectively is what the suggestion is. It's been raised that this is only a one-year settlement. I was at the Local Government Association when that nice man, Michael Gove, he stood up and he promised a 2-year settlement. He has an excuse. He promised a 2-year settlement. He was sacked by Boris. He then was reappointed, and therefore his previous promises didn't count. That's a good system. It clearly isn't acceptable, but it's a good system. This council, like every other council, is going to face significant pressures in the next few years. It's faced significant pressures in the last 10 anyway. Nothing changes in that sense. But eventually, you run out of wriggle room. 10 years ago, we had a turnover of about 10 million. Today it's roughly 6.5. I mean, it doesn't actually matter to the pound, shillings and pence. The point is, if you take out 35% of your turnover, your services will struggle. Your council tax will have to rise. And frankly, the long-term viability of district councils becomes in question. That is not the reason why I'm retiring. That's got nothing to do with it. I would happily carry on, but apart from the fact I'd probably be dead because Julia would kill me, and I have promised to retire. But the fact remains, this council, like many other councils, is in real financial difficulty. We will have real financial problems to face with, and we will have to turn to working with people we've not thought about working before. But we will do that, and we will do it as well as possible. Finally, 2 weeks ago, I said something which in many ways I do not regret, but nonetheless I need to clarify. I have very often said to people, there is no such thing as a stupid question. And if you simply ask a question, which is one that you probably should know the answer to, but you're not quite sure, I would say there is no such thing as a stupid question. That's a good question, because that clarifies, that makes something sensible. However, a fortnight ago, I was asked a question which was not a straightforward question. It included a lot of other bits and pieces, which frankly, in my view, was an exception, and therefore I stand by what I characterised it as 2 weeks ago. Finally, I also did a quote. And the quote was, if you tell a lie often enough, people will start to believe it. And in fact, it goes on to talk about how government reinforces lies. And to an extent, if you want an example of that, go and look in Russia Today, or even indeed look at some of the literature put out about this council and this authority. The problem is, what I didn't do is complete the quote, which is a lie, you can tell a lie often, you can get people to believe it, but it remains a lie. And if you wish to look it up, the gentleman I'm quoting is Joseph Goebbels. It is not pleasant to have to deal with people who lie. I'm going to finish on what I noticed earlier, which I'm not a great greens eater. If you talk to Julia, she will tell you I'm allergic to the colour green. There's only one colour worse, which is red. I do not like eating tomatoes. So there is a solution. No, you like this, there's a solution. One Theresa Coffey, who is the Environment Minister, has suggested the alternative to eating your greens is turnips. So can I suggest that this evening... no, turnips. Turnips. Can I suggest then this evening, we go home, if you haven't got any cookbooks at home or recipes, then you can look it up on the internet, and we all find recipes. And when I return and give my final speech leader on the 18th of April, I will try and bring some turnip crisps. Thank you. I'll take turnip crisps.
Thank you.
I was in both. Sorry, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship. This term has been an exceptionally tough term for us and for many councils right across the question I've got to just ask, and this is really going back to what you mentioned with regards to a few weeks ago, is do you think derogatory terms should be used? Would there not be a better way of framing what I said in a more palatable sort of way? I mean, the thing is, it's all about what culture do we have in this council and what are we telling our residents out there in terms of how do we speak. But what I have more of an issue with, rather than the derogatory slur, is what was coupled with that when Councillor Boyce said, I can say what I like. Does that mean you can do what you like? That has a slight whiff of arrogance to me. But also, yes, we are finding the straight. That's what I wanted to ask in terms of, do you think derogatory slurs like that should be accepted in whatever context? I don't expect an apology, but I expect to know what kind of ethos we've got here. Thank you.
Councillor Boyce, sorry, can I just interject there, please? Because this matter has actually been dealt with, Councillor Allen, as you're fully aware. The matter was referred to the Deputy Monitoring Officer, who provided a response in my absence. That response was not satisfactory, according to the recipient, so I was requested to give a further response. I did contact an independent person. The independent person's view was that the remark was not derogatory, it was part of the political debate. And I'd just like to stress and make sure that members in this room realise that the person that decides that what goes on and what is acceptable is myself as the monitoring officer. And where there is a breach of the code of conduct, those of you that have been here a long time know that I will deal with it and I will deal with it effectively. So I don't believe that Councillor Boyce is required to give any response with regard to the comment that was made. That matter is now closed.
No, one question.
No, he should. He went on forever.
It's the lead statement. This question.
No, but it wasn't a statement.
I've finished, but
No. Would you like to speak on this, Councillor Allen? Very quickly. We would like to.
Yes, you are right. You are right, Mr. Gill. You did answer the question and we accept your recommendations. But the question I asked is, after that, when you said I could say what I feel like, is that the kind of...
Sorry, Councillor Allen, I think you misunderstand the point. The fact of the matter is, no member in this room can say what they like, because if they say what they like and they are in breach of the code, they will have me to deal with. And on that occasion, I wasn't here. I have reviewed the footage frequently. I have sent the footage to the independent person. I think it was a glib remark from Councillor Boyce in the heat of the moment, given the political back and forth that was taking place. With regard to his use of the phrase that was deemed derogatory, the independent person says that it wasn't derogatory. I've made my position clear, and as far as I am concerned, that matter is now closed, and subject to the Mayor's approval, I would suggest that this meeting is brought to an end.
Yes. Been an interesting evening. Thank you all for coming, and I now close the meeting. Thank you.
Your Worship.
Hold on.